Margaret Holloway had built an empire from nothing. At 52, she sat at the head of a company worth $3 billion, her name on the cover of every major business magazine, her decisions capable of shaking entire markets with a single word. She had climbed every mountain the world had placed in front of her, crushed every obstacle beneath her Italian leather heels, and emerged victorious every single time. But on the morning of her daughter's 8th birthday, Margaret Holloway sat in a corner, chair of a rented party hall, and felt like the most powerless woman alive. The hall was decorated with pink balloons and silver streamers. A princess-themed cake sat on a table near the window, its 8 candles unlit. The bounce house hummed quietly in the corner. The magician she had paid $800 stood near the entrance, checking his watch. And Lily, Margaret's daughter, sat in her motorized wheelchair in the center of it all, wearing a tiara and a birthday dress, her small hands folded neatly in her lap, her brown eyes scanning the door, every few seconds with the kind of patient hope that only children are, capable of sustaining. Not a single guest had arrived. Margaret had sent out 14 invitations 3 weeks ago, each one carefully designed with Lily's favorite cartoon characters and hand-delivered in personalized envelopes. 14 families had said yes. 14 families had gone silent. The calls started 2 days before the party. 1 cancellation, then 2, then a flood of politely worded excuses that all amounted to the same thing. People were uncomfortable. Lily had been in a wheelchair since she was 4 after a rare neurological condition, had taken the use of her legs. Some parents didn't know how to explain disability to their children. Others simply didn't want the inconvenience. Margaret had built 3 hospitals in her lifetime and donated millions to medical research, but she could not buy her daughter a single friend willing to show up. She watched Lily adjust her tiara and smile at the magician, and something cracked open deep inside her chest. She pulled out her phone and pretended to read emails so that Lily wouldn't see the tears forming in her eyes. That was when the hall door opened. A man stepped in, somewhere in his mid-30s, wearing a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt that suggested he had dressed in a hurry. Behind him, clinging to his hand with both of hers, was a little girl around Lily's age, with 2 uneven pigtails and paint-stained sneakers. The man looked around the nearly empty hall, took in the untouched cake, the waiting magician, the single little girl in the wheelchair, and seemed to understand everything in an instant. His name was Daniel. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at the office building 2 blocks away. His daughter, Sophie, had spotted the balloon decorations through the hall window on their walk home from school and pressed her nose to the glass, asking what the party was for. Daniel didn't know Margaret Holloway from any magazine cover. He had simply looked at a little girl sitting alone at her birthday party and made a decision that required no deliberation. He walked across the hall, crouched down to Lily's level, and said, "My daughter Sophie thinks your tiara is the most beautiful thing she's ever seen. Would it be okay if we joined your party?" Lily looked at Sophie. Sophie looked at Lily. Then Sophie said very seriously, "I really like princess stuff too." And just like that, Lily laughed. A real laugh. Bright and unguarded and absolutely full of life. Sophie climbed into the chair beside Lily at the birthday table. Daniel sat across from Margaret, who was still trying to compose herself, and quietly asked if they were intruding. Margaret shook her head and couldn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "You're the only ones who came." Daniel nodded slowly, the way people do when they understand that something is more painful than it looks. He picked up the little party hat from the table and put it on his head without being asked. The magician, sensing the shift in the room, stepped forward and announced his first trick. Sophie screamed with delight when a bouquet of flowers appeared from nowhere. Lily grabbed Sophie's arm, and they laughed together with the pure, unfiltered joy of children who have just decided to be best friends. Margaret lit the 8 candles herself. When Lily leaned forward to blow them out, she didn't close her eyes to wish the way she usually did. She just looked at Sophie sitting beside her, squeezed her hand, and blew them all out in one breath. Later, as Daniel helped load leftover cake into boxes, Margaret asked him why he had walked in without hesitation. He shrugged in the way people do, when they've never considered that kindness requires a reason. She looked like she needed someone to show up, he said. "That's all?" Margaret had written speeches about corporate values, about leadership, about the responsibility that comes with power. But standing in a party hall full of pink balloons and leftover cake, she understood in a way she never had before that the most powerful thing a human being could do was simply show up. Lily and Sophie became inseparable after that day. Daniel and Margaret built a genuine friendship rooted in mutual respect. And every year after that, without fail, Sophie was the first one through the door. If this story moved your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, where every story reminds us that one small act of kindness can change everything.